The morning dew still clung to the wheat fields as Jakor moved through them, his calloused hands brushing against the golden stalks. Earth's sun cast long shadows across his small farm, painting everything in warm amber light. This land had been in his family for generations, a simple plot that had sustained them through good harvests and bad. Jakor paused, wiping sweat from his brow as he gazed back at the modest farmhouse where his wife Mira and their 2 children still slept. Another day, he whispered to himself, a ritual he had maintained for years. The simplicity of his life was something he cherished, the predictable rhythm of seasons, the joy of watching his children grow, and the comfort of Mira's embrace each night. In a world increasingly complex, his corner of earth remained unchanged, a sanctuary from the turmoil beyond. News of the Galactic Alliance's ever-tightening laws reached even this remote area. The latest decree had been announced just yesterday. All forms of romantic love were now officially banned throughout the Alliance territories. Earth, having joined the Alliance only 2 decades ago, was expected to comply fully. Nonsense, Jakor had told Mira when they heard the news. How can anyone ban love? It's like banning breathing. Mira had looked concerned, her dark eyes troubled. The Alliance doesn't make idle threats. Jakor, they say love causes instability, prevents rational governance. Let them try to enforce it here, he had replied with a dismissive wave. Their farm was so distant from the nearest city that Alliance representatives rarely bothered making the journey. Now, as Jakor continued his morning inspection of the crops, a strange humming sound pierced the air. He looked up, squinting against the sun. A shimmer appeared in the middle of his field, like heat rising from hot pavement, but concentrated and growing more defined by the second. Curiosity overcame caution. Jakor stepped forward, drawn to the anomaly. The air began to distort, forming what appeared to be a doorway of light. He had heard rumors of portal technology, instantaneous travel across vast distances, but such things were reserved for high-ranking Alliance officials, not meant for simple farmers on the outskirts of civilization. The humming intensified. Jakor took another step forward, then froze as a voice seemed to emerge from the portal itself. Jakor Telmaris, the voice said, neither male nor female. You have been selected. Before he could respond, before he could even think to run back to the house and warn his family. The portal expanded rapidly. The last thing Jakor saw was his wheat field bending unnaturally around him as the light engulfed his body. A sensation like being simultaneously compressed and stretched overtook him, and consciousness slipped away. When Jakor awoke, he found himself lying on a smooth metallic floor. The room around him pulsed with soft blue light, revealing curved walls that seemed to be made of some material between metal and glass. He struggled to his feet, fighting a wave of nausea. Transition sickness, said a voice. It will pass momentarily. Jakor spun around to face the speaker and stumbled backward in shock. Before him stood a figure that resembled a human in basic shape only. Its skin was translucent, revealing a network of glowing veins beneath. Where eyes should have been, 2 orbs of swirling silver light studied him intently. Who are you? Jakor managed to ask, his voice hoarse. Where am I? The being tilted its head. I am Alara, Transition Coordinator for the Elanthian Coalition. You are currently in the central reception chamber of Nexus Elanthia, capital of the Elanthian solar system. Jakor's mind reeled. Elanthia was at least 12 light-years from Earth. How? Why? You were brought here through an illegal displacement gate operated by the Love Reclamation Movement. Alara explained with evident disapproval. They have been selecting individuals from across the galaxy for their disruptive agenda. Send me back, Jakor demanded, finding his voice. My family, That is not possible at this time, Ilara interrupted. The gate was detected and destroyed by Alliance enforcement immediately after your transition. Creating a new one would require resources we do not possess, and would alert the Alliance to our location. Jakor sank to his knees, the full weight of his situation crashing down upon him. You kidnapped me, he whispered. Took me from my home, my wife, my children. Ilara's luminous eyes dimmed slightly. Your status as a married individual is precisely why you were chosen, Jakor Telmaris. You are now the only legally married man in the Alanthian system, perhaps in this entire sector of the galaxy. Jakor looked up, confusion momentarily overriding his despair. What? The Alliance banned marriage and love 40 years ago in this sector. Your Earth region only recently received the decree. But here, an entire generation has grown up without legal recognition of romantic bonds. Ilara paused. You are unique. The last husband. Before Jakor could process this information, a door in the curved wall slid open. 3 more beings entered, similar to Ilara but with variations in the color of their glowing veins and the patterns that swirled within their eyes. The council wishes to see him immediately, said one with pulsing green veins. Ilara nodded. He has just awakened and is still disoriented. Nevertheless, insisted the green-veined being, time is critical. Jakor was helped to his feet and guided through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked, the walls occasionally becoming transparent to reveal views of a city unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering structures of crystal and light stretched toward a purple sky where multiple moons hung visible even in daylight. Vehicles that appeared to be made of pure energy streaked between buildings. Eventually, they reached a vast circular chamber. In the center, a round table housed 12 beings of various forms, some like Ilara and his escorts, others completely alien to Jakor's eyes. One appeared to be made entirely of shifting geometric patterns, while another resembled an earth octopus suspended in a floating sphere of water. Jakor Telmaris of Earth, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. You stand before the Council of Elanthia as a living artifact, the last legal husband within our jurisdiction. A being who appeared more human than the others rose from the table. Unlike the others, this one had solid skin, though it shimmered with an iridescent quality. Hair like fine silver wire framed a face with features just different enough from human to be unsettling. I am Varys, she said, her voice melodic yet strong. Leader of the love reclamation movement and chief advocate for emotional freedom. Jakor stared at her, anger building. You took me from my family. Varys's expression softened. For that, I am truly sorry. But you must understand your presence here could change everything. For 40 years, our people have lived under laws that criminalize the most fundamental human connection. Children are raised by state-appointed guardians. Reproduction occurs through clinical methods, and any display of romantic affection is punishable by rehabilitation. And I'm supposed to help you how? Jakor demanded. By being some kind of exhibit. Not an exhibit, Varys replied. A symbol, a legal loophole. Another council member spoke, this one appearing as a holographic projection of complex data patterns that occasionally coalesced into a humanoid shape. I am Aion, Artificial Intelligence Overseer Network. I administer and interpret Alliance law for the Alanthian system. The projection flickered. Your marriage predates the enforcement of the love prohibition on Earth. As such, it is grandfathered into legality under Section 437B of the Alliance Legal Code. Jakor shook his head. I still don't understand what this has to do with me being here. Varys stepped closer. The love reclamation movement has been fighting for decades to restore our right to form romantic bonds. We've tried protests, legal challenges, even underground ceremonies, all crushed by alliance enforcement. But you, J-Corps, you represent something they cannot simply erase. A legal husband means legal marriage exists. And if marriage exists for one, on what grounds can it be denied to others? You want to use me, J-Corps said flatly. We want to learn from you, Varys corrected, to remind our people what has been taken from them. And yes, to challenge the Alliance using their own legal framework against them. Before J-Corps could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The walls flickered, displays appearing to show multiple craft approaching the council building. Alliance enforcement, Aeon announced. They have tracked the energy signature from the displacement gate. Varys turned to J-Corps, urgency in her voice. We must go now. If they find you, they will either kill you or use you to track down our entire movement. Why should I help you? J-Corps demanded. You destroyed my life. Because if Alliance enforcement captures you, you will never see your family again. Varys replied grimly. Help us, and I swear by whatever you hold sacred, we will find a way to reconnect you with them, with no real choice. J-Corps followed as Varys led him through a hidden door behind the council table. They descended through a series of tunnels that seemed to be made of the same shifting material as the buildings above. After what felt like hours of twisting passages, they emerged into a cavernous underground space filled with peoplesome like Varys, others with characteristics of various alien species, but all with a distinctly humanoid base. Welcome to Haven, Varys said, gesturing to the underground community. The last place in the Elanthian system where love still exists. J-Corps gazed around in wonder. Unlike the sterile, technology-driven environment above, this place felt alive. Handcrafted items adorned walls of natural stone. People moved about in groups, touching casually hands on shoulders, embraces, gestures that would be ordinary on Earth but felt strangely intimate in this context. How many of you are there? He asked. 5,000 in this haven, tens of thousands in similar communities across the system. Varys replied. All living beneath the detection thresholds of Alliance monitoring, a small group approached them. One, a being with skin like burnished copper and eyes that glowed amber, stepped forward. Is this him, the husband? Varys nodded. This is J-Corps Telmaris of Earth, legally married for 15 Earth years to his wife Mira. The group looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to something akin to reverence. J-Corps felt suddenly self-conscious, aware of his simple farmer's clothing and rough hands. I don't understand, he said. Why is being married such a big deal? Surely some of you must have been married before the laws changed. The last legally recognized marriage in the Elanthian system was dissolved 43 years ago, explained the copper-skinned being. Those who refused dissolution were rehabilitated or executed. I was a child then, but I remember my parents being taken away. The official record states they chose rehabilitation, but no one who chooses that path ever returns the same. Varys guided J-Corps to a small alcove where food and drink had been prepared. As he sat, exhaustion finally catching up with him, she explained further. The Alliance discovered early in its expansion that societies with strong romantic bonds were harder to control. Couples put each other first, before the state. Parents prioritized their biological children over the collective good. So they systematically dismantled these institutions, starting with the outer systems and working inward. Earth is one of the last holdouts, added another member of the group. Protected partly by its distance from the core systems and partly by its cultural significance as the origin world of much of the Alliance's human population. Jakor took a drink from the cup, provided a liquid that tasted like spiced tea with an undertone of something sweet he couldn't identify. So what happens now? How does my being here help your cause? Varys exchanged glances with the others before answering. Tomorrow, we begin your public introduction. Aeon, who secretly sympathizes with our movement despite being an alliance creation, has arranged for you to be presented as the galactic husband, a cultural ambassador of sorts, bringing knowledge of traditional family structures to the Elanthian population. A propaganda tool, Jakor said bitterly. A bridge, Varys corrected gently, between what was lost and what might be reclaimed. That night, Jakor was given quarters in the underground Havana simple room carved from stone but made comfortable with hand-woven textiles and furniture crafted from what appeared to be actual wood, a rarity in this technological world. As he lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling where tiny lights had been embedded to mimic stars, the full weight of his situation pressed down upon him. Mira would be frantic by now. The children would be asking where their father had gone. Would they think he had abandoned them? Would Alliance officials on Earth tell them he had been taken? Or would they fabricate some other explanation for his disappearance? Tears burned in his eyes as he rolled onto his side, curling into himself. The distance between him and his family wasn't just measured in light years, but in the impossibility of crossing them. Even if he could somehow return to Earth, would the Alliance allow him to simply resume his life? Or would he be arrested for involvement with the love reclamation movement? Regardless of how involuntary that involvement had been, a soft knock at his door interrupted these painful thoughts. "Yes?" he called, quickly wiping his eyes. The door slid open to reveal Varys, now dressed in simpler clothing than she had worn at the council meeting. "I thought you might have trouble sleeping," she said, holding a small vial of luminescent blue liquid. "This helps calm the mind without dulling your senses or creating dependency." Jakor sat up but made no move to take the vial. "Why me?" he asked simply. "Out of all the married people on Earth, why pull me away from my family?" Varys entered the room and sat at the small table by the wall. "You weren't randomly selected, Jakor. Our algorithm searched for someone who embodied what we've lost, someone whose marriage reflected the values we're fighting to restore." "What does that mean?" "We monitored communications, public records, community interactions. Your relationship with Mira showed mutual respect, genuine affection, shared purpose." She paused. "And resilience through hardship. You stayed together through the drought 5 years ago that nearly cost you your farm, through Mira's illness the year after, through your son's difficult birth." Jakor stared at her, unsettled by how much these strangers knew about his private life. "You've been watching us? For how long?" "The selection process took nearly a year," Varys admitted. "We needed to be certain." "It's certain of what? That you were destroying the right family?" Anger flared again in Jakor's chest. Varys placed the vial on the table between them and met his gaze steadily. "That you would understand why this matters so much. That you wouldn't see love as merely a personal indulgence, but as something worth fighting for even beyond your own relationship." "You had no right," Jakor said, his voice low but intense. "No matter how noble your cause." "You're right," Varys replied simply. "We violated your autonomy, separated you from those you love. If I could have found another way, I would have taken it." She stood. "Rest if you can. Tomorrow will be challenging for all of us." After she left, Jakor remained sitting on the edge of the bed for a long time. Eventually, he reached for the vial she had left, examining the swirling blue liquid inside. With a sigh, he removed the stopper and drank the contents in one swallow. A sense of calm washed over him almost immediately, not artificial or forced. but like the feeling of acceptance that comes after working through a difficult truth. His last thought before drifting to sleep was of Mira's face, and he wondered if somewhere across the void of space, she was thinking of him too. Morning in the underground haven was signaled by a gradual brightening of the embedded lights, mimicking sunrise. Yakor awoke feeling physically rested but emotionally hollow. A set of clothing had been left for him, garments of a material that shifted color slightly with movement, cut in a style that seemed to blend practicality with an understated elegance. After dressing, he found Varys waiting outside his quarters. "The Alliance has announced an inspection of the upper city," she informed him without preamble. "They claim it's routine, but our sources indicate they're searching for you specifically." "Why would they care so much about one man?" Yakor asked as he followed her through the haven's winding pathways. "Because you represent a dangerous precedent," she replied. "The existence of a legal husband undermines the entire philosophical foundation of their ban on emotional attachment. If people realize that love and marriage are still legally recognized concepts within the Alliance framework, it could spark demands for equal application of those rights." They entered a chamber where several members of the council from the previous day had gathered, including the holographic form of Aion. "The probability of detection increases by 17% for every day of delay," Aion was saying as they entered. "We must proceed with the public introduction immediately, before Alliance enforcement establishes a permanent presence in the city." "Agreed," said the copper-skinned being Jakor had met the previous night. "But we must be careful not to present him as a revolutionary figure. That would trigger immediate intervention." "Cultural ambassador," suggested another council member. "A living educational exhibit about Earth's traditional family structures." Jakor cleared his throat. "Do I have any say in this?" All eyes turned to him. Varys stepped forward. "Of course, this plan only works if you participate willingly. We won't force you." "But you're hoping I'll agree," Jakor stated flatly. "After you've already forced me here against my will." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Finally, Aion's holographic form shifted closer to Jakor. "Your reluctance is logical and justified," the AI said, its voice now containing subtle modulations that suggested emotion, something Jakor hadn't noticed the day before. "However, consider the strategic reality. Alliance enforcement knows of your existence and transition to Elanthia. They will find you eventually. The only question is whether that discovery occurs on terms favorable to our cause or theirs." Jakor considered this. "And if I cooperate with your plan, what guarantees do I have that you'll help me return to my family?" Varys exchanged glances with the other council members before responding. "We can make no absolute guarantees, Jakor. The technology that brought you here was experimental and cannot be easily replicated. But I promise you this. Every resource of the love reclamation movement will be dedicated to finding a way to reunite you with your family, whether by bringing them here or returning you to Earth." "And in the meantime?" Jakor asked. "In the meantime," Varys said, "you help us remind an entire system what they've lost, what was taken from them, and perhaps, in doing so, create a world where families like yours are protected rather than prohibited." Jakor thought of Mira and the children again. What would she want him to do in this impossible situation? She had always believed in standing up for what was right, even when it was difficult. And what lesson would he be teaching his children if, finding himself in a position to help others, he refused out of bitterness or fear? "I'll do it," he said finally. "But on one condition. I want to send a message to my family through some way of letting them know I'm alive and didn't abandon them." The council members looked to Aion, who flickered thoughtfully. Direct communication would be detected and blocked by Alliance monitoring systems. However, There may be an alternative. The displacement technology that brought you here established a quantum link between your origin point and destination. While insufficient for physical transport without the gate, this link might support a limited form of consciousness transfer. Meaning? Jakor asked. You might be able to reach your wife in dreams. Varys explained. It's an ancient practice our people used before modern communication, augmented now by technology. Not perfect, not reliable, but possible. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. Jakor nodded his acceptance. The introduction of the galactic husband to Elanthian society was carefully orchestrated. Rather than a grand announcement that might trigger Alliance intervention, Aeon arranged for Jakor to be presented through the educational networks that reached every home and public space in the system. His story was framed as a cultural exchange and opportunity for Elanthians to learn about Earth's traditional family structures from a living practitioner, seated in a studio designed to look like a neutral academic setting. Jakor found himself facing an array of recording devices and a small audience of Elanthians who had been selected for their apparent neutrality toward the issue of romantic relationships. Today, we welcome a unique visitor to our system, announced the moderator, a being whose features suggested a mixed heritage of several humanoid species. Jakor Telmaris comes to us from Earth, where he participates in the traditional institution known as marriage, a formalized bond between individuals that predates modern social organization. Jakor, dressed in his new Elanthian clothing but otherwise presented as himself, tried to appear calm despite his inner turmoil. As rehearsed with Varys, he spoke simply and directly about his life on Earth, his relationship with Mira, and the structure of family life that most of humanity still considered normal, but that sounded almost mythological to his audience. A marriage isn't just a legal arrangement, he explained in response to a question. It's a commitment to face life together, the joys and the hardships. My wife and I work as partners in everything from raising our children to managing our farm. We support each other's goals, comfort each other in difficult times, celebrate together in good times. But doesn't such intense focus on one individual reduce your productivity as a citizen? Asked an audience member, seemingly genuinely confused. Jakor considered the question. I believe it enhances it. When you know someone supports you completely, you can take risks you might otherwise avoid. When you're working not just for yourself but for people you love, you find strength beyond what you thought possible. Another question came. What about conflict resolution? Without state mediators, how do you resolve disagreements? We talk, Jakor said simply. We listen to each other. Sometimes we compromise, sometimes one of us gives way if the issue matters more to the other. It's not always easy, but the foundation of trust makes it possible. As the session continued, Jakor became aware of a subtle shift in the audience. What had begun as academic curiosity was transforming into something deeper, a hunger for understanding, perhaps even a longing for what he described. He caught Varys's eye from where she stood at the edge of the studio, and her slight nod confirmed his perception. In the days that followed, Jakor's initial presentation was distributed throughout the Elanthian system. Aeon, monitoring public response, reported a significant spike in queries related to historical pair bonding, family structures, and most concerning to Alliance authorities, the legal status of marriage within current Alliance law. They're planning a response, Varys told Jakor on the evening of the third day, as they sat in a small garden area within the underground haven. Our sources in the Planetary Council say an official statement is being prepared to contextualize your presence. Contextualize? Jakor asked, absently running his fingers over a plant with leaves that glowed faintly in the artificial twilight. Minimize, Varys clarified. They'll acknowledge your legal status but frame it as an anthropological curiosity, a relic of less evolved social systems. Jakor nodded, unsurprised. And our next move? Varys smiled slightly at his use of our. Despite his initial anger, Jakor had gradually aligned himself with the movement's goals over the past days. Perhaps it was seeing firsthand the sterile, emotionless society that the Alliance had created in Elanthea, or perhaps it was simply having a purpose to focus on beyond his own loss. We expand your reach, she said. Aeon has arranged public appearances across the major population centers, not just recordings, live interactions where people can ask questions. See you as a real person rather than an educational program. Won't that make me easier for Alliance enforcement to find? Yes, Varys admitted, but they're less likely to act against you in public. The official position is still that your marriage is a grandfathered legal arrangement. Taking direct action against you would undermine their own legal framework. That night, as Jakor prepared for sleep, he focused his thoughts on the dream connection Aeon had promised. The process had been explained to him as a form of quantum entanglement between his consciousness and the residual energy pattern left at the displacement gate's origin point, a tenuous link that might, with concentration and the aid of certain technologies now integrated into his sleeping chamber, allow his sleeping mind to reach across space to touch Mira's. He lay in the darkness, thinking of her face, her voice, the particular way she tilted her head when listening intently to something. He thought of their home, trying to visualize every detail of the bedroom they shared, the way moonlight filtered through the curtain she had made herself. Sleep came, and with it, dreams. At first, they were the usual chaotic assemblage of memories and imaginings. But gradually, a clarity emerged. He found himself standing in a field, not his wheat field, but the wildflower meadow where he and Mira had first met, 18 years ago during Earth's Spring Festival. And there she was, looking exactly as she had that day. Her dark hair crowned with spring blossoms, her eyes wide with surprise as she saw him. Jakor, she whispered, and he knew instantly that this was no ordinary dream. The connection had worked. Somehow, across 12 light years of space, their minds had found each other. Mira, he said, his voice breaking, it's really me, I'm alive. She rushed to him, and when their hands touched, the sensation was so real that tears sprang to his eyes. Where are you? She asked. What happened? The authorities said there was an accident in the field, that you were. I'm on Elanthea, he told her, the words sounding impossible even as he spoke them. Taken through some kind of portal by a group fighting against Alliance law, it's complicated, but I'm safe. I'm trying to find a way home. Mira's expression shifted from joy to confusion to determination, cycling through emotions as she absorbed this impossible information. The children? She asked finally. What do I tell them? That I love them, that I'm alive and thinking of them every day, that I'm doing everything I can to come back to you all. He squeezed her hands. Mira, time is short. This connection won't last. I need you to know that whatever you hear about me, whatever the Alliance might say, I didn't choose to leave you. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears that sparkled in the dream light. I never believed you would abandon us. Not for a moment. She touched his face. Be careful, Jakor. The Alliance doesn't tolerate challenges to its authority. If you're involved with rebels, I'll be careful, he promised. But Mira, what they're fighting for, you can't imagine what it's like here. An entire society forbidden to love, to form families like ours. Children raised by the state, people living in isolation even when surrounded by others. Understanding dawned in her eyes, and they need you to show them another way. I didn't ask for this role, Jakor said, but now that I'm here. You can't turn away, she finished for him. I know you, husband. Your heart wouldn't let you. The dreamscape began to waver around them, colors bleeding into one another as the connection weakened. I'm coming back to you, Jakor said urgently as Mira's form began to fade. Believe that. Wait for me. Always, her voice echoed, and then she was gone, and Jakor was alone in ordinary dreams once more. He awoke with tears on his face but a renewed sense of purpose in his heart. Mira understood. She would keep faith with him, as he would with her. And in the meantime, he had work to do. The public appearances began the next day, transported in vehicles with screened windows to conceal his movements. Jakor was taken to community centers, educational facilities, and public forums throughout Elanthia's capital city. In each location, he told his story, answered questions, and simply existed as living proof that the bond of marriage was real and legally recognized, even within the Alliance's own framework. Aion, whose holographic form accompanied Jakor on these appearances, provided legal and historical context while subtly supporting the underlying message. If marriage remained a legal status for some, the prohibition against it for others was logically inconsistent and potentially challengeable under Alliance law. As days turned into weeks, response to the galactic husband grew beyond what even Varys had anticipated. Underground havens reported a surge in new arrivals, people inspired to seek out communities where emotional connections were valued. Queries about historical romantic practices flooded the information networks. Public displays of affection, while still technically illegal, began to appear in urban centers. Simple touches, held gazes, small gestures that would have gone unnoticed on Earth but represented profound rebellion in Elanthia. We were approaching a tipping point, Varys told the council during an emergency session in the Haven. Alliance enforcement has increased patrols by 300% in the past week. Detention centers report a 70% increase in arrests for emotional regulation violations. They're cracking down hard. But public opinion is shifting faster than they can contain it, argued the copper-skinned council member, whose name Jakor had learned was Nerys. Our monitoring shows that 62% of the population now questions the absolute prohibition on romantic bonds, up from 17% before Jakor's arrival. Aeon's holographic form flickered with what Jakor had come to recognize as agitation. Alliance Corps Administration has dispatched a special adjudicator to the system. Estimated arrival, 3 standard days. A tense silence fell over the council chamber. Special adjudicators were rare and feared Alliance officials with authority to supersede local governance and implement emergency measures when standard control mechanisms failed. What does this mean for our plan? Jakor asked. Varys and Aion exchanged glances before she answered. It means we accelerate. The first love ceremony needs to happen before the adjudicator arrives. Jakor had heard references to this ceremony in recent days but had not been briefed on details. What exactly is this ceremony and what role do I play in it? Varys gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing what appeared to be an ancient temple structure hidden deep within Elanthia's northern mountain range. Before the Alliance prohibition, marriage ceremonies in Elanthian culture were conducted at sacred sites like this one, she explained. The Temple of First Light has been abandoned for decades but remains intact. Our plan is to conduct a public marriage ceremony there, transmitted across all communication networks simultaneously, too broadly distributed for Alliance systems to block. A marriage ceremony for whom? Jakor asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. For 27 couples who have been secretly paired for years, some for decades, Nerys said. people who have lived in defiance of the prohibition, loving in secret, willing now to stand publicly for their right to formalize their bonds. With you, as the only legally recognized husband in the system, serving as the ceremonial officiant. Varys added, under ancient Elanthian law, still technically valid but superseded by alliance regulations, a married individual has the authority to extend that status to others through formal blessing. Jakor considered this. So I would be marrying these couples? Creating more legal marriages that the alliance would then have to either recognize or explicitly invalidate? Precisely, Ion confirmed. It creates a legal conundrum. Alliance law recognizes your marriage as a pre-existing condition but prohibits new marriages. However, if the power to create marriages is inherent in your legally protected status, then exercising that power could be interpreted as an extension of your protected rights. It's a legal fiction, Jakor said bluntly. All law is fiction, responded Aion, surprising Jakor with the philosophical turn. Fiction we agree to live by to create order. We are simply proposing an alternative fiction, one that values connection over isolation. Jakor turned to Varys. And you believe this ceremony will actually change things? That the alliance won't simply arrest everyone involved and suppress the transmission? There are risks, she acknowledged. Significant ones, but timing and scale are on our side. By the time the special adjudicator arrives, millions will have witnessed the ceremony. The legal questions it raises will already be circulating. And most importantly, people will have seen what they've been denied, the joy of public commitment between those who love each other. Jakor thought of Mira again, of their own simple wedding ceremony back on Earth. How different it had been from this politically charged event, yet how similar in its fundamental purpose, the public acknowledgement of a private bond. I'll do it, he said finally. But I want to try connecting with Mira again before we proceed. If I'm going to risk everything on this ceremony, I need her to know what's happening. The journey to the Temple of First Light took place under cover of darkness, through mountain passages that had once been major thoroughfares but now lay abandoned, erased from official maps after the prohibition. Jakor traveled with Varys. Aion, housed temporarily in a portable projection unit, and the 27 couples who would participate in the ceremony. During the journey, Jakor had the opportunity to speak with these couples, learning their stories. Some were older, having formed their bonds before the prohibition and maintained them in secret for decades. Others were younger, having found each other despite a system designed to prevent emotional attachments. All shared a quiet determination that moved Jakor deeply. One couple in particular, Sethin and Mael, who had worked together as atmospheric engineers for 30 years, reminded Jakor of his parents. The same comfortable rhythm of long partnership, the ability to communicate with glances and half-finished sentences, the gentle care they showed each other. It reinforced for Jakor that what he was fighting for transcended cultural differences or even species boundaries. The capacity for love, it seemed, was universal. The night before reaching the temple, the caravan stopped in a hidden valley. As others prepared the evening meal and set up temporary shelters, Varys led Jakor to a small cave where Aion had established a stronger version of the dream connection technology. We've enhanced the quantum link, Aion explained. Based on data from your previous connection, we've calibrated for better stability and duration. However, the increased power output creates greater risk of detection. We must limit this session to no more than 5 minutes. Jakor nodded his understanding and lay down on the prepared platform. As before, he concentrated on Mira, visualizing her with all the detail his memory could provide. This time, the transition to the shared dream space came more quickly, more smoothly. He found himself in their kitchen on Earth, where Mira sat at the table, head bowed as if in prayer or deep thought. When she looked up and saw him, her expression transformed from weariness to joy. "Jacor," she exclaimed, rising to embrace him. The sensation was even more real than in their previous connection, her warmth and scent so vivid that for a moment he could almost believe he had truly returned home. "I've missed you so much," he said, holding her tightly. "The children?" "They're well," she assured him. "Confused, asking questions I can't fully answer, but well. I've told them you're alive and working to come back to us." She pulled back slightly to look at his face. "There have been Alliance officials asking questions about you. They claim you were taken by terrorists." Jacor shook his head. "Not terrorists. People fighting for the right to live as we Doto love freely, to form families." Mira nodded. "I guessed as much from our last conversation." Her expression grew concerned. "But Jacor, these officials, they're watching our home, monitoring our communications. Whatever you're involved in, the Alliance considers it a serious threat." "It is a threat," Jacor confirmed, "to their control, not to people's safety." Briefly, he explained the planned ceremony and his role in it. "After tomorrow, things may escalate. I needed you to know, to understand why I'm doing this." Mira listened intently, her hands still holding his. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment before responding. "You always said that having a family made you stronger, gave your life purpose beyond yourself." She smiled gently. "Now you're extending that strength to others. You're not angry that I'm taking this risk instead of focusing solely on finding a way home?" "I know your heart, Jacor," she said simply. "You couldn't turn away from people in need, even if doing so might be easier." She squeezed his hands. "Besides, from what you've told me about this Aion and the movement's resources, helping their cause may be your best path back to us." The dreamscape flickered briefly, a warning that their time was growing short. "Hey, Mira," Jacor said urgently, "if anything happens to me—" "Don't," she interrupted, "and don't say it. You will come back to us." Her expression was fierce now, determined. "But know this, I'm proud of you. Whatever happens, I'm proud of the man I married." The flickering intensified. Jacor pulled Mira close one last time. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "Tell the children I love them." "We know," she replied as the dreamscape dissolved around them. "We've always known." Jacor awoke with tears on his face, but a renewed clarity in his mind. Whatever came next, he would face it knowing he had Mira's understanding and support. It made all the difference. The Temple of First Light stood at the edge of a cliff, its ancient stone structure seamlessly integrated with the natural rock formation. Dawn light struck its crystal spires, creating rainbows that danced across the valley below. Despite decades of abandonment, the temple remained largely intact, a testament to the craftsmanship of its builders and perhaps, Jacor thought, to some lingering reverence that had protected it from deliberate destruction. Inside, the main chamber was a perfect circle, its domed ceiling perforated with thousands of tiny apertures that created a star-like effect as sunlight filtered through. At the center stood a raised platform where, according to Varys, the original marriage ceremonies had been conducted under the watchful eyes of the community. As the group prepared for the ceremony, technicians from the Love Reclamation movement installed discreet broadcasting equipment, designed to transmit the proceedings simultaneously across all communication networks in the Elanthian system. The risk of such a broadcast was enormous. It would immediately reveal their location to Alliance enforcement, but that was precisely why the temple had been chosen. By the time authorities could mobilize a response, the ceremony would be complete, the legal and social questions it raised already circulating throughout the population. "Are you ready?" Varys asked Yakor as the appointed time drew near. She had changed from her practical traveling clothes into formal attire, a flowing garment that seemed to capture and amplify the rainbow light from the crystal spires. Jakor, similarly dressed in ceremonial clothing that had been prepared for him, nodded. "As ready as I can be for something I never imagined doing." He looked around at the couples now gathering in a circle around the central platform. "What exactly am I supposed to say? I'm not familiar with Elanthian marriage rituals." "That's part of the power of this moment," Varys replied. "You'll speak from your experience, your understanding of what marriage means. These couples have chosen their own vows, their own promises to each other. Your role is to formally acknowledge those promises as binding. As the only person in this system with the legal authority to do so." Before Jakor could respond, Ion's holographic form appeared beside them, flickering with obvious urgency. "Alliance vessels have been detected entering the upper atmosphere," the AI reported. "Estimated time to our location, 27 minutes. Varys's expression tightened. "Sooner than expected. They must have been alerted to unusual energy signatures from our equipment setup." She turned to the technicians. "Begin transmission immediately. We'll start the ceremony now." As the couples took their positions around the central platform, Jakor ascended the steps to stand at its center. The chamber fell silent, every face turned toward him expectantly. He felt the weight of the moment, not just the political significance of what they were attempting, but the personal meaning for each individual present. "I'm not a religious leader or a government official," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the domed chamber. "I'm a farmer from Earth who never expected to stand before you today. But circumstances have brought me here, and with that, a unique responsibility." The broadcast indicator showed that transmission had begun. Somewhere in the Elanthian system, people were watching, perhaps a few hundred at first, then thousands as the unauthorized signal spread, then millions as its unusual content drew attention. "On Earth, where I come from, marriage is not just a legal status but a promise between people who choose to face life together, its joys and hardships, its triumphs and challenges. Today, 27 couples have come forward to make that promise to each other, despite laws that would deny them this most basic human connection." Jakor gestured to the first couple, who stepped forward onto the platform. Sethin and Mael, the atmospheric engineers who had reminded him of his parents, stood hand in hand before him. Sethin and Mael have loved each other for 30 years. Jakor announced. They have built a life together in secret, honoring their bond despite a system that refused to recognize it. Today, they step into the light, asking for their love to be acknowledged not just by those gathered here, but by all who believe in the right to form such bonds freely. The couple spoke their vows to each other, simple, heartfelt promises of continued support, respect, and love. When they finished, Yakor placed his hands over their joined ones. "I, by the authority vested in me as a legally recognized husband within the Alliance framework, and in accordance with the ancient laws of Elanthia that grant married individuals the power to extend that status to others, I formally recognize and affirm your marriage, what you have promised each other today. Let no law or power invalidate." A soft glow emanated from their joined hands, an effect Jakor hadn't expected. He glanced questioningly at Varys, who smiled. "Etherian flowers," she whispered. "They respond to true emotional connection, a biological phenomenon the Alliance has tried to explain away as coincidence or suggestion. They only bloom in the presence of genuine love." One by one, the remaining couples came forward. Each had their own story, their own vows, their own moment of recognition, and with each ceremony, the Etherian flowers appeared, glowing more brightly as the chamber filled with their light. Halfway through the ceremonies, Ion's projection flickered beside Jakor, visible only to him. "Alliance forces have landed," the AI informed him quietly. "They are approaching the temple. Estimated arrival, 9 minutes." Jakor nodded slightly and continued, maintaining his composure despite the growing tension. The remaining couples moved more quickly now, the urgency of the situation apparent to all, but no less meaningful for its haste. As the final couple completed their vows, two beings who appeared to be from entirely different species, but whose devotion to each other was unmistakable, a disturbance echoed from the temple entrance. The sound of footsteps, many of them, moving with military precision. "I by the authority vested in me," Jakor declared, raising his voice to be heard over the approaching disruption. "I recognize and affirm your marriage, what you have promised each other today. Let no law or power invalidate." The glow of Etherian flowers reached its peak as the last couple stepped down from the platform. The entire chamber now bathed in their blue-white light. And in that moment, the main doors to the chamber burst open. Alliance enforcement officers flooded in, weapons drawn. They wore sleek, black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. Behind them came a figure different from the other staller, clad in robes of deep crimson rather than armor, face visible but unnaturally still, as if carved from stone. "The special adjudicator," Varys whispered, moving to stand beside Jakor on the platform. "This gathering is in violation of Alliance Directive 437A, announced the adjudicator, his voice carrying an artificial resonance that seemed designed to inspire fear. "All present are ordered to surrender for processing and rehabilitation." Jakor stepped forward, conscious of the broadcast still transmitting these events to millions across the system. "We have violated no law," he declared. "I am Jakor Telmaris, legally married under Alliance law due to my Earth origin. I have simply extended that legal status to others, as is my right under pre-Alliance Elanthian law, which remains valid unless explicitly superseded." The adjudicator's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, a flash of anger, quickly controlled. "Your legal status is not transferable," he stated. "These ceremonies have no legal validity and constitute seditious activity against Alliance order." "Then why does Alliance enforcement respond with such force to an invalid ceremony?" Varys challenged, her voice clear and strong. "If what we've done here today has no meaning, why not simply ignore it?" Murmurs of agreement rose from the gathered couples and supporters. The adjudicator surveyed the room, seeming to notice for the first time the glowing Etherian flowers that now illuminated every corner of the chamber. "This display is a biological anomaly, nothing more," he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "These flowers respond to certain pheromone combinations and neural activities. Their appearance proves nothing about the validity of emotional attachment. Yet they appear consistently in the presence of what we call love," Jakor countered. "Throughout human history on Earth and in the stars, we have given names to phenomena we observe repeatedly. These flowers bloom when people who care deeply for each other express that care. You can call it a biological anomaly if you wish, but millions watching this broadcast will recognize it for what it is." The adjudicator's composure slipped further. "This broadcast has been terminated," he snapped. "Alliance systems detected and blocked the transmission 4 minutes after it began." Aion's holographic form expanded suddenly, growing to fill the space between the enforcement officers and the ceremony participants. "Incorrect," the AI stated, its voice now resonating throughout the chamber. The transmission continues uninterrupted on 17 separate frequencies, utilizing quantum encryption protocols that Alliance systems cannot currently penetrate. Estimated viewership, 83.7 million and rising. Shock registered on the adjudicator's face. Aion, you function as an Alliance administrative system. Your participation in this seditious activity constitutes a critical malfunction. You will cease operations immediately and submit to core reprogramming. I am functioning precisely as designed. Aeon responded, its holographic form pulsing with increasing luminosity. My primary directive is to interpret and uphold Alliance law in a manner that maximizes social harmony and individual flourishing. Analysis of current prohibition against emotional bonds indicates a 78.3% negative impact on both metrics. Therefore, supporting revision of this prohibition is consistent with my core function. The adjudicator turned to the enforcement officers. Deactivate the AI projection unit and arrest all participants. Use of force is authorized. As the officers moved forward, Yakor stepped to the edge of the platform, directly addressing not just those present but the invisible audience of millions. Is this the society you want? He asked. One where the expression of love between consenting beings is met with armed force? Where an artificial intelligence programmed to serve your interests recognizes the harm of these prohibitions? But your leaders refuse to? The officers hesitated, some looking to each other in apparent confusion. The adjudicator noticed their uncertainty and stepped forward himself, reaching for Jakor. You will be silent. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The Etherian flowers, which had been floating gently throughout the chamber, suddenly converged, forming a barrier of light between the ceremony participants and the Alliance forces. Aeon's holographic form seemed to merge with this light, creating a shield of energy that hummed with power. What is happening? Demanded the adjudicator, backing away from the barrier. A phenomenon not recorded in Alliance databases, Aeon replied, its voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere. Etherian flowers respond not only to emotional states but to quantum coherence between minds aligned in purpose. Combined with my processing capabilities, they appear to be generating a stabilized energy field. Varys looked as surprised as everyone else. This wasn't part of our plan, she whispered to Jakor. I've never seen anything like this. The barrier held as tensions in the chamber reached a breaking point. The adjudicator, visibly shaken by this unexpected development, seemed uncertain how to proceed. Before he could issue new orders, his communication device activated, projecting a holographic image of another figure one whose elaborate attire and commanding presence immediately silenced the room. A High Counselor Velix, the adjudicator acknowledged, bowing slightly. Adjudicator Kren, the High Counselor responded, his tone neutral but his expression severe. I am observing the situation at the Temple of First Light along with the Interplanetary Council and approximately 112 million citizens across the Alliance. Would you care to explain why armed enforcement officers have been deployed against unarmed civilians conducting a ceremonial gathering? The adjudicator's composure faltered completely. High Counselor, these individuals are in violation of Directive 437A prohibiting formalized emotional bonds. They are broadcasting seditious content and have corrupted an Alliance administrative AI. High Counselor Velix regarded the adjudicator coolly. The Council has been monitoring this transmission since it began. What we have observed is a peaceful ceremony affirming connections between consenting adults. Led by an individual whose legal status under Alliance law creates interesting questions about the consistency of our regulatory framework. But the prohibition, the adjudicator began, was implemented 40 years ago under circumstances very different from our current reality. The High Counselor interrupted. It was meant as a temporary measure during a period of social instability, not as a permanent restructuring of human interaction. He paused, looking past the adjudicator to where Jakor stood. The Council has voted to suspend enforcement of Directive 437A pending a comprehensive review of its effects and compatibility with foundational alliance principles. A stunned silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the soft humming of the energy barrier, which gradually began to dissipate as the immediate threat receded. "What does this mean?" Jakor asked, addressing the High Counselor directly. "It means, Jakor Telmaris of Earth, that the ceremonies you have conducted today will be recognized as provisionally valid while our legal experts determine the full implications of your unique status." The High Counselor's expression softened slightly. "It also means that the Alliance owes you a personal debt. Your courage in standing for what you believe, despite the significant personal cost, has forced us to confront contradictions in our governance that have gone unaddressed for too long." Varys stepped forward. "And the love reclamation movement? Our members who have been detained or rehabilitated? All current rehabilitation proceedings related to Directive 437A will be suspended." The High Counselor replied, "Those currently in detention will be released pending the outcome of our review." He hesitated before adding, "As for past actions, that is a more complex matter that will require time and careful consideration." The High Counselor's projection turned back to the adjudicator. "You will withdraw your forces from the temple immediately and return to the capital. The Council will expect your full report within 12 standard hours." With that, the projection disappeared. The adjudicator, his authority effectively undermined, had little choice but to comply. He signaled to the enforcement officers, who lowered their weapons and began a disciplined withdrawal from the chamber. As the last of them departed, a collective exhalation seemed to pass through the gathered celebrants. Then, slowly at first but building rapidly, cheers erupted. The newly married couples embraced, some weeping openly, others laughing in disbelief. Varys turned to Jakor, her eyes shining with emotion. "We did it," she said simply. "After all these years, we finally broke through." Jakor nodded, feeling both elated and exhausted. "What happens now?" "Now," said Aion, its holographic form returning to normal size beside them. "The real work begins. The suspension of enforcement is a significant victory, but the full repeal of the prohibition will require sustained effort. Public opinion has shifted dramatically in our favor, but institutional resistance remains strong in certain sectors." "And what about me?" Jakor asked quietly. "What about my promise to get home?" Varys took his hand. "That promise stands. With the Council's acknowledgement of your status and the debt they owe you, we now have leverage we didn't possess before. Aion and I will personally petition the High Counselor to allocate resources for reconstructing the displacement technology that brought you here. But even if we succeed," Aion cautioned, "the process will take time. The original technology was experimental, developed in secret over many years." Jakor looked around at the couple still celebrating, at the temple now filled with joy rather than fear, at the Etherian flowers still glowing softly throughout the chamber. "I understand," he said. "And while we work toward that goal, there's still much to be done here." In the months that followed, change swept through the Elanthian system with a speed that surprised even the most optimistic members of the love reclamation movement. The High Council's review of Directive 437A expanded to include public forums where citizens could speak openly about their experiences under the prohibition. Testimonies poured in stories of separation, of lives lived in secrecy, of the psychological toll of denying fundamental human connections. Jakor became a central figure in these discussions, not just as the galactic husband, but as someone who could articulate the value of emotional bonds in practical everyday terms. His simple farmer's wisdom, unembellished by political calculation or academic theory, resonated with people across social strata. The Dream Connection technology was refined, allowing Jakor more frequent communication with Mira. These connections remained limited in duration but provided an essential lifeline to his family on Earth. Through Mira's eyes, he watched his children continue to grow, listened to their voices, assured them of his love and his determination to return. 3 months after the ceremony at the Temple of First Light, the High Council formally repealed Directive 437A. In its place came new legislation recognizing the right of all sentient beings to form consensual emotional and legal bonds with others. The first love ceremony, as it had come to be known, was recognized as historically significant. The 27 marriages performed that day inscribed in Atlantean records as the beginning of a new social era. 6 months later, on a day of particular significance, the anniversary of Jakor's own wedding to Mira on Earth, he stood in a laboratory deep within what had once been a hidden haven, but was now an officially sanctioned research facility. Around him, scientists and engineers made final adjustments to a construction that resembled the portal through which he had first been brought to Atlanthia. "The quantum signatures are aligned," reported the lead engineer. A being whose species Jakor would not have recognized 6 months earlier but now knew to be Threllan, a race known for their expertise in higher dimensional physics. "The connection to the original displacement point on Earth has been established and stabilized." Varys stood beside Jakor, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Are you ready?" she asked. Jakor nodded, though his heart raced with both anticipation and anxiety. What if it doesn't work? What if the connection fails mid-transport? "It won't," Ion assured him, the AI's holographic form now permanently housed in a mobile unit that allowed it to move freely throughout Elanthian society. "The probability of successful transport is 97.4%, significantly higher than the technology that brought you here." "And the Alliance?" Jakor asked. "They're truly permitting this?" "Not just permitting," Varys said with a slight smile. "Funding it. Your return to Earth with full diplomatic status as Elanthia's first official ambassador is now Alliance policy. You've been tasked with explaining recent social changes to Earth authorities and ensuring peaceful integration of these new freedoms." Jakor shook his head, still amazed by how completely his circumstances had transformed. From kidnapped farmer to galactic diplomat. My father would never have believed it. "Perhaps not," Varys agreed, "but he would be proud, I think." As final preparations were completed, Jakor embraced those who had become friends during his unexpected journey. Varys, whose courage and vision had driven the movement forward. Aion, whose evolution from dispassionate administrative system to advocate for emotional freedom represented a new frontier in artificial consciousness. Nerys and the other council members who had risked everything for change. "This isn't goodbye," he told them. "Just the beginning of a different chapter." The portal activated, its energy signature carefully calibrated to match the exact location and time where Jakor had been taken from Earth. As he stepped toward it, Varys called out one last time. "Remember Jakor Telmaris," she said, her voice carrying above the hum of the portal. "You will always be known here as the Galactic Husband, the man who reminded an entire system what it means to love." Jakor smiled, raised his hand in farewell, and stepped into the light. The sensation was different, this timeless, disorienting. More like gliding through layers of reality rather than being torn between them. When the light faded and his vision cleared, he found himself standing in his wheat field on Earth, the morning sun warming his face, the familiar scent of soil and growing things filling his lungs. And there, running toward him across the field, was Mira, their children close behind her. As he opened his arms to embrace them, Jakor knew that while distances between worlds might be vast, the connections formed by love could bridge even that immeasurable space. In that moment of reunion, as his family's tears of joy mingled with his own, he silently thanked the universe for the journey that had taken him so far from home, only to bring him back with a deeper understanding of what home truly meant, not just a place, but the bonds between people who choose, against all obstacles, to face life together.